Well, good morning. My name is Dean Ward, and I'm the lead pastor of the River. And I am so grateful that you are joining in with us this morning, whether you're part of our church located in New Kensington or our campus in Franklin Park. I just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to worship with us this morning. And I want to give you an opportunity to share this with your friends, relatives, neighbors, co-workers, kids, aunts, uncles. Those will all be relatives as well, I guess. But there's something that happens whenever you take the time just to invite. I sent my message, the link to the YouTube page for this video. Last week, I sent it to a friend who I just had no idea if he'd be interested in watching it. And he was, and he responded and talked to me about the theme of the message. And it was a blessing to him and to me. So I want to invite you just to take a few moments and share this message. I want to welcome you to Wattersonville. Now, you may be wondering, where is Wattersonville? Well, you're not the very first person to wonder that, because I don't even think GPS knows where Wattersonville is. But I love the way the sign says, "Welcome to Wattersonville, God's country." And then it doesn't say the year it was established. It doesn't share the year it was incorporated. It just says settled in 1794. I love that Wattersonville was settled over 200 years ago. And today we are filming at my friend's place here on the beautiful Allegheny River. I want to just let you know we are in part 9 of our series of messages, just simply called Thrive. And we're asking the question, what makes a good life? And in this series, we've been looking at things that help form a good life, that help us live a good life, that help us thrive. We've looked at friendships and contentment and peace. We've taken the time on Father's Day to look at marriage, family, and fatherhood. Last week, we looked at suffering and the pivotal role that suffering plays in thriving. Well, today, we are going to look at the ultimate component of thriving. We're going to look at the goodness of love. And I know this is just the welcome to the service, not actually the message, but I just wanted to start here to paint a picture for you of love. And whenever I am come across something that I think illustrates love in a very deep and profound way, I like to pause and just pay attention to it. Now, one of the fascinating things is on this property, there's an outhouse. And I have a friend that collects photographs of outhouses. And these outhouses fascinate my friend, Linda Hendricks. I hope you're watching, because I don't know if you've ever seen an outhouse quite like this. But to be honest, I think this outhouse, more than any other outhouse I've ever seen, I'm certain of, and maybe in a more profound way than most illustrations of love, show what true love is. If you'd come and take a look at this, I want to show you the unique feature of this outhouse that proves true love. So, the ultimate expression of love and demonstration of love is being able to use a 2-seat outhouse. Have you ever seen a 2-seater before? I never have, never heard such a thing. However, a 2-seat outhouse, if you're able to share the outhouse with somebody that close, love must really be there. That's deep love, or at least tolerance. All right, guys, welcome to church, or welcome to the 2-seated outhouse to kick off our service this morning. Thank you for joining us to worship us with us today.
Sometimes on this journey I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. No, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. Failure's never final when the Father's in the room. No, failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide, the dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Miracles take place, the cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Oh, Jericho walls are quaking, strongholds now are shaking. Oh, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, in the Father's house. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. You're in the Father's house. love towers over me. Gracious tempest in the sea. Your love is like a storm. Oh. Let your tide of mercy rain. Let it flood my heart again. Surround me like an ocean. Your love is crashing over me. It's surging like a raging sea. Immerse me in the wonder of your love. Downpour of unending grace, consuming all my reckless ways. My sins submerged, your love has saved my soul. Your love is like a storm. Like a raging sea, immerse me in the wonder of your love. A downpour of unending grace, consuming all my reckless ways. My sins submerged, your love has saved my soul. Your love is like a storm. A storm. Your love is like a storm.
The Bible has a lot to say about the goodness of love, but there's one pivotal passage that we're going to begin this service with, this message with, and end the message with. And it's a passage that you've probably heard read in settings like weddings, but it is not a passage that I've really preached from before. So I want to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and dig into dig into the goodness of love. Now, Paul begins by saying this very fascinating statement at the end of chapter 12. He says, "And yet I will show you the most excellent way." And Paul is saying, I want to show you how to thrive, and I want to show you the most excellent way. Now, for those of you that think that love is just something preachers talk about because they're soft and effeminate and don't really, have a lot of strength to them, I want to help you understand the grittiness of love. I want to help you understand the importance of love, the strength of love, the power of love. If you think love is just about fairies and unicorns, I hate to disappoint you. Love is the most powerful force in the universe that we have at our disposal, and I want to invite us to lean into the goodness of love. Now, I love the way Paul frames this at the beginning of chapter 13. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have the faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardships that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing." Now, Paul is writing to a church that has a lot of new believers that are young in their faith, and yet they are not yet maturing in their faith in the way that they need to. So Paul is speaking very challenging words to them. You could say they were very immature Christians. And part of this, they were addicted to the spectacular. They wanted God to show up in supernatural, spectacular ways, and that was what, drew them. That was fascinating to them. And I forgot to turn my phone off. My brother-in-law is calling. So at this time, if you'd give me a second, I will put my phone on silent, which I always take the time to do this, but forgot this time. So just give me a second, because we're very committed to just filming one take. You get that? And I get a break to wipe my brow because it's very humid. We're filming on Thursday evening, and there we go. You could say these were very immature Christians, and they were addicted to the spectacular. They wanted to wow and be wowed. They wanted to see the unbelievable things happen. But Paul begins, "Let me show you a more excellent way." He dives into the grittiness of love, the strength of love, the power of love. The gritty, pounded out, everyday work of love. It's not about your impressive religious expressions or demonstrations. And it makes me wonder, does a watching world really care about our spectacular and impressive? The reality is, they're moved by our love. Nothing else matters if you don't love. Love is the most excellent way, and yet the most hardest way. Now, I know that's not great grammar, but love. And I want to share with you, as we look at the goodness of love, at some of the hardest things about love. First of all, love is a forever unpaid debt. What do you mean by that? And I know, some of you may be huge Dave Ramsey fans, and he teaches avoid debt at all costs. Well, as Christians, as believers, there's one debt that never gets paid off. And that's this debt to love. Paul says in Romans chapter 13, verse 8, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. For Christians, there is a continuing debt to love one another that never gets paid off. You can never say, I'm done loving, I've reached my quota, I've paid that off, I'm done doing that. Kind of like I paid off the car, I don't have a car payment, I'm debt free. No, when it comes to love, we are forever indebted to love. We never stop paying the price of love, and love always costs. We can't pay off love because Christ loved us in a way that can never be paid off. It can never be bought. This love has been paid for us and indebts us to love others and to get better at love. Our hearts growing bigger and bigger in love toward others the older and more mature as followers of Christ we get. This is a good debt. And it means we always owe love. Love is a forever unpaid debt. Secondly, I want you to know, love is dangerous. Love is dangerous. So is the humidity. I love the way C.S. Lewis talks about how dangerous love is. I want to read you this quote, and I want to have you just let it sit in your soul. We're gonna put it on the lower part of the screen so you can just absorb it as I read it. He says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping your heart intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. The alternative to tragedy, or at least to the risk of tragedy, is damnation. The only place outside of heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers and anxieties of love is hell. There's no safe investment in paying off the debt of love. When I meet with grieving families, when I talk to people that are grieving, they grieve so deeply because they loved so deeply. Now we have Tippy, my buddy's dog, joining us. Tippy's a great dog. Doesn't shed. Love Tippy. Lewis shows there is suffering, though, if you don't love. It's just a different type of suffering. As we mentioned last week, there's really no way to avoid suffering. But we are called to allow suffering to grow us, to change us, to help us become more like Jesus. Now, I know that some of us struggle most when it comes to expressing love, to expressing it to a lost and dying world. We look at people that are different than us, people that have different values, people that live differently, people that vote differently, people that behave differently, people that believe differently. And we find it very challenging to love them. But those are the people that we are called to love. I want to invite you to experience this video just simply called Forgetting Love, that focuses on how we've chosen to love in such a way that keeps us from loving those who need it the most. Let's never forget love.
When did we forget how to love? Did it happen suddenly? Or was it a gradual decline? When did we forget the very foundation of the gospel? For God so loved. Love is what moved God to action. Love is what held Jesus to the cross. Love is what rolled away the stone. But we've forgotten that part. Without love, we are simply a resounding gong, a clanging cymbal, a bunch of noise. Without love, we are nothing. Is that what people see in us? Meaningless, empty noise? Love is supposed to be patient and kind, gentle, not angry or arrogant. Yet in our effort to stand on truth, we have forgotten the very thing these truths are based on. Love. Never once did Jesus fail in this. Not in his heartbreak or his anger. Not in his joy or his betrayal. His default has always been love. Maybe it's time the church was more like Jesus.
Well, I have to note, as the pastor of the river, after 18 years, this is the very first sermon I have preached on the river. I'm so grateful to be here on the Allegheny River near East Brady on Brady's Bend to share the final part of this message on love with you. And I just hope that video settled in your soul. And I hope that you will be committed not to forget to love those who we are called to love. So love is a forever unpaid debt. Love is dangerous. I also need to let you know that love needs to be pursued. Now, it's funny. We always like the easiest path, the path of least resistance. And this is demonstrated very clearly, especially as I'm trying to navigate these waves and not fall. This is seen very clearly in that we all want to be thin and in shape, but we don't want to do the hard work to make it happen. And for the past 2.5 years, as I've shared, I've gone to the gym just about every morning, Monday through Friday, and worked out. And I promise you, heading to the gym, I know for the next 45 minutes to an hour, it's going to be the hardest physical work and exertion that I do that day. And it's exhausting, but I pursue it because my health, my well-being is worth the effort and energy. And I just want to say, love doesn't just happen. It's not just a ride that you coast on like a lazy river in a raft just floating. Love must be pursued. Love is the best pursuit of your life, the most excellent way. I love the way Proverbs 21:21 tells us, whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor. Love must be pursued. It requires effort, energy, intentional attention. I love the way Paul says to this young minister in Timothy, chapter 6, but you, man of God, flee from all this pursuit of earthly acquisition and financial gain. He's saying, flee that because of all the entanglements that happen there, and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. So I want to share with you how Paul describes our pursuit of love in 1 Corinthians 13. He paints the most accurate and amazing picture of what love looks like. Beginning at verse 4, he says, love is patient. Now I know for some of us, patience is the hardest thing we ever have been called to exert. But love is patient. Love is kind. And kindness is strong. When you live with kindness in our culture, in our day and age, you're a strong person. And I want to invite all of us to up our kindness level of expressing kindness to others. I love when you go to a restaurant or a place that is in the service industry and they have a sign that says, please be patient with us and be kind. We are short-staffed as the entire world is, and we're doing our absolute best. Love is kind. Love, it does not envy. It doesn't look at these houses in the background and say, oh, I envy those people. I want to live on the river in a house like that. I want to see what it's like to live that life. I want to let envy consume my soul. Well, love doesn't do that. It doesn't envy. It does not boast. So if you live in a house like that, it doesn't say, hey, look at me. I'm the king of the world. No. Love doesn't boast. Love is not proud. Love has a strong humility to it. Love, it is not self-seeking. It's not selfish. It's not always just looking out for itself. It looks out for others. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone or close to somebody that has a really short fuse? And it takes very little to anger them. Love is not easily angered. Love, it keeps no record of wrongs. You know what a record of wrongs is, don't you? It's where you take all the wrongs that have been done to you by someone and you gunny sack them. You put them like in a sack, figuratively speaking, and you walk around saying, nothing's bothering me, and then they do that one last thing, and you just take that gunny sack filled with all the wrongs they've committed to you, and they whack you. You whack them with it. You unload on them. I was talking to a friend this week that described someone that whenever somebody would pass away, this person would write a letter to the surviving relatives describing all the wrongs the deceased person had committed against them. Love doesn't do that, okay? Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but here's what it does delight in. It rejoices with the truth. Love, it always protects. Love protects. We know what that's like, especially as husbands, as spouses, as parents. We feel that very strongly. Love, it always trusts. It always trusts that the person I love really does have my best interest at heart, really does. It really does trust them, that they are for me, not against me. Love always hopes. It always hopes. It always believes that its best days are yet ahead. Love always hopes. Love always perseveres. It makes it through the challenging times. Love never fails. Then Paul just takes some time to describe things that will end and will fail. He says, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. And then this famous phrase, this famous statement, I love this, don't miss this. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. What he's saying, as I look for my towel, because I can't find it, but I have a bandana in my pocket that I will gladly use. I got it. What he's saying, my final point, is love requires maturity. Love, it requires maturity. Now, I may have shared this with you before. It's not one of my proudest moments, but when I was a senior in college, we got together with a group of friends for a kind of a last hurrah, big dinner together at a restaurant. And they put together these little awards that they gave to each person. And unbeknownst to me, they had an award for me. My award was that they nominated me as the one most likely to get shot in a grocery store express checkout line, arguing with the cashier about the number of items in my cart. How about that designation? And I'm like, what are they talking about? I don't even know what that means. But do you know what I've paid attention to? Those times when I get triggered to a point where I want to fight for right and justice about something superfluous. I think I said that word right, superfluous. Something meaningless, but it's important to me for whatever reason. That happened this morning. We're filming on Thursday before this being aired on Sunday. And this morning, I'm going to the gym at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm coming up to a stoplight, and I have a green light. It's clearly green. And the person coming up the hill on the right side of me doesn't even slow down, blows right through the red light, right in front of me, like there was no stoplight there. And there was a stoplight. And my blood began to boil. I wanted to let them know what they did wrong and how dangerous it was and how it wasn't acceptable. So fortunately, right where I have to make a left-hand turn at the next light, they were sitting in the right-hand lane, and I was able to pull right up next to them. And as I pulled up next to them, I rolled my window down, and the voice in the back of my head said, Dean, what are you doing? This is unnecessary and unwise. This is immature. Knock it off. And I'm like, I don't care. And I'm thinking, you're a pastor. You're going to scold the person in the car next to you. They may have a gun. What is your deal? And orchestrated as though the Lord himself was watching out for me, my light turns green, but there's no one behind me, so I roll my window down, and just then a car pulls up behind me and blows its horn, which I think is a message from God saying, knock it off, make your left-hand turn. It doesn't make sense for you to break the law sitting at a green light, trying to scold somebody at the red light beside you for going through a red light. Dean, grow up. Now, I tell you that story not just because it really happened and because it's true, and it is and it did, but because I am ever in the pursuit of maturation, and I don't always get it right. And Paul is saying there was a day when I was so childish about love and expressing love and showing love. I was selfish. I made it about me. But when I became a man, when I grew up, I put away those childish things. And some of us are still holding on to the childish expressions of love that we have our entire life. And it's time to grow up. It's time to put away our selfishness, our self-centeredness. It's time to put away an unwillingness to serve others, bless others, help others. It's time to love. We can't remain in our childish selfishness and love deeply. As an adult, love requires a ton of sacrifice. And Jesus models this for us. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 2 says, walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. We are called to love that deeply. Paul wraps up Corinthians chapter 13. Verse 12, he says, for now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Paul's saying the most excellent way to thrive in your life, the most excellent path to the good life, is to love. To love deeply, richly, and with your entire being. That kind of love is powerful, strong, gritty, transformative, and good. May you experience the goodness of love. Amen.